So, what could Ireland and India both have in common? If you're thinking British colonization, you're correct. When we think of Ireland, we usually recall the Irish potato famine. But little known is the fact that both Ireland and India suffered countless amounts of famines at the hands of the British. The Irish potato famine of 1845 killed about 1 million people in the span of 7 years. But does anyone know about the multiple famines in Bengal? For example, the Bengal Famine of 1943 killed 5 million people in less than 1 year. Bengal is located in the estuaries of the river Ganga. It's one of the most fertile lands in the world and the most fertile land in India. Its soil is nurtured by the warm waters of the Ganga and the radiance of the sun. It receives copious amounts of rainfall per year. In 1942, Bengal accounted for 90 million tons of grain per year. That was 35% of India's grain production. Yet deep into the Second World War, the province of Bengal was struck by a devastating famine. Starvation and disease wiped out a tenth of Bengal's population. First-hand accounts reveal how people clamored for starch water and leaves and grass. The dead piled up in the streets and villages because the living were too weak to cremate them. Parents threw their children into wells to spare them a slow and painful death. Others committed suicide to escape the torment. The survivors were either lucky enough to find work in Calcutta, or they earned food by prostituting themselves. The people of Bengal depended on grain crops, especially wheat and rice, to survive. So in late 1942, a cyclone hit the region, destroying some of the grain. But this was not uncommon in Bengal. In the past, when some food source had been compromised, Bengal would have been sent food supplies from its neighboring states, such as Punjab or Delhi. In addition, Bengal would have been secure with its large reservoirs it had built up over the years. The 5 million people could have easily sustained themselves and had been saved with such aid. So how did these people die in less than 10 months? Well, in 1942, when Japan took control over Burma, Bengal's next-door neighbor, Churchill enacted Scorched Earth policy, which is a military strategy of burning or destroying buildings, crops, or other resources that might be of use to an invading enemy force as to de-incentivize them from entering. Churchill evicted about 180,000 farmers and seized 125,000 acres of farmland for an army base. He seized all boats in the region and banned shipping, despite the fact that a significant supply of Bengal's food came through trade from the bay. Nevertheless, India exported 70,000 tons of rice per year to the British war effort while the war was going on. That was enough to feed 400,000 people for a year. While Bengal was depleting its food stocks, Britain was increasing its stock to 80.5 million tons. Britain's population was 40 million people fewer than Bengal's. Viceroys of India requested food to be shipped to relieve the famine. Churchill bluntly refused. He said, "Famine or no famine, Indians will breed like rabbits." He also refused help from the US and Canada. Australian supply ships sailed right past India and into Europe. Churchill did not let them divert into Bengal for the starving masses. Churchill infamously said that the starvation of anyhow underfed Bengalis is less serious than that of the sturdy Greeks. Yet India even exported civilians into the war effort. India suffered over 2.5 million casualties in war, whereas native British casualties were 45,000. Like most other famines, the Bengal Famine of 1943 was strictly engineered by the British Raj to cripple the Indian economy and self-sustainability. This is because while the famine was happening, while people were starving, the British increased taxes from 20% to 60%, forced Bengali farmers, who were accustomed to growing wheat and rice for sustenance, to start growing indigo and cotton. This depleted the soil, halted the production of edible foods, and furthered the man-made famine. The British did not stop here. They took these raw materials from India and produced clothing in England and sold it back to the starving Indians at extremely elevated prices and shut down traditional clothing, which would in turn cripple the economy. seeing these horrid effects, poets like Sarojini Naidu wrote poetry to inspire traditional weavers to keep at their jobs. It was this event that later inspired Gandhi to begin his Swadeshi movement. India eventually obtained her God-given right of independence, but it should not be forgotten that the Bengal Famine of 1943 was engineered by the British under Churchill to increase their colonial profits and intensify English textile production, crippling the Indian economy.